welcome to this how-to video for connecting and using external VSTs in Reason. My name is Steve and I've been a Reason user ever since version 4 way back in 2008. This video is for PC users of Reason, and while this can be done on an Apple, I won't be showing that here. The principles are the same, but you'll need Apple equivalents of the software I'll be using here to do it. Before we get started, it should be a given that you have Reason, your audio drivers, your MIDI control drivers, and your VSTs already installed and functional on your system. At this point, I recommend saving this video so you can come back to it because you will be rebooting your system twice during the setup process. With that said, let's talk about what you'll need to make this happen. You will need two audio interfaces with SPDIF connections on both. One audio interface will host Reason, and the other will host the external VSTs. The SPDIF connections will make it possible for the two interfaces to communicate with each other. It really doesn't matter if your interfaces are internal in your computer, or one internal and one external, or both external. As long as they both have the SPDIF in and out connections, you're good to go. I'll be using the Focusrite Sapphire Pro 24 DSP with VRM and the Scarlett 6i6. As you can see, they both have the SPDIF connections. Next, you'll need MIDI hosting software, and for our purposes here, I'm using Minihost. It is still in beta, but it is a solid performer, and it's free. I've included a link in the description below for the download, and you will have to sign up and become a forum user, but like I said, it's free, so it's well worth it. Next up, we'll need some virtual internal MIDI cabling software, so Minihost, Reason, and your MIDI controller can all communicate without any hassles. For that, I'll be using Loop B1, and that link is also provided below and is also free. At this point, I would stop the video, download the software and install it, and reboot your computer for everything to be recognizable by everything else. While you have the computer shut down, run your SPDIF cables back and forth between the two audio interfaces. Connect SPDIF out from your primary unit to SPDIF in on the other unit, and SPDIF out of the other unit to SPDIF in on your primary unit. Also make sure both units are connected to your computer via FireWire, USB, Thunderbolt, or any combination that suits your interfaces. Welcome back. I trust it all went smoothly for you. Now let's get all of our ducks in a row, so to speak. First, open Reason, click on Edit, Preferences, and the Audio tab. This is where we tell Reason which audio interface it's going to be working with. Now you want to click the down arrow at the audio card driver here. Here's where you select the audio interface you'll be using with Reason. In my case, it's the ASIO Sapphire. This is where we get our happy little green arrow that tells us everything is working properly. Now you can set your sample rate and buffer size, but the important thing to remember here is whatever sample rate and buffer size you select here has to be the same for all devices in the chain. My system is comfortable with a 48K sample rate and 256 for the buffers. Okay, now that your primary audio card, sample rate, and buffer size have been selected, make sure all of your input and output channels are active. If not, select the channels box, like so, and make sure all the boxes are checked. If they're not, put a check mark in them and then click OK. From here we move on to the Sync tab in Preferences. Here we want to tell our primary audio device how it will send MIDI output to the other devices in the chain we are creating. Under the MIDI clock sync, click on the arrow in the Output box where you should see Loop B Internal MIDI. This is what you want to select. Again, the fall is going well. You should get the happy little green arrow after you select it. With that done, for the sake of being thorough, click on the Control Surfaces tab and make sure your MIDI controller is set up properly. Providing you did this when you first started with Reason, there is no situation that should have changed this, but it never hurts to double check. That's all we need to do in Reason for the moment, so you can save your selections by closing the Preferences window, and go ahead and close your Reason project session. You don't need to worry about saving because we've already saved in the Preferences section. Now we'll set up Minihost and get it ready to rock and roll. Keeping in mind, it doesn't matter if you run Reason and Minihost in 32-bit or 64-bit, but they both have to be at the same bit rate. Since I'm running my session in 64-bit, I'll open the 64-bit Minihost. Now click on the OK in the window, because if you click anywhere else, it'll take you to the FL Studio webpage, and we don't need to go there. From here, we're going to click on File and Preferences, which brings up a new window. Here is where we tell Minihost which audio interface it will be using. So we'll start at the top here with the audio device type. At the very least, you should have Windows Audio and Direct Sound as options. I have ASIO because that's what my system works with, so that's what I select. For the device, you select the driver for your audio interface. In this case, it's my Scarlett 6i6, and since that's connected through USB, that would be the proper driver. Double check to make sure your sample rate is the same here as it is in your primary audio interface, and don't be too concerned about the buffer size because the system compensates for that. Now, if this is hooked up properly, you should be able to hit the test button and get a short little sine wave. That's always a good sign. Now we move down to MIDI, where we're only concerned with MIDI in 1. Since we told our primary audio device and MIDI out to use the loopy one, that would be the same selection we'll make here for the MIDI in. Okay, now we can tell Minihost where to find our plugins. Come to the upper left hand corner of the Preferences window and click on Plugins. Here you have up to 4 different customizable places for Minihost to search. If your list is populated down here, go ahead and hit Clear List. All my VSTs are on my C drive, but they're not all in the same folder, so I've clicked on Browse and I set it up to search local disk C for my VSTs. Now click on Scan and Verify, and it will go through the process of looking for all the VSTs on the C drive. The thing to keep in mind here is it will show you, don't worry about that, it will show you 32-bit and 64-bit VSTs. The way you can differentiate is by looking at format, and it'll tell you if it's 32-bit or 64-bit. Keeping in mind, the 64-bit version will only run 64-bit VSTs, and the 32-bit version will only run 32-bit VSTs. Now, this is going to take a little bit of time because I got a lot of VSTs and a fairly large drive for it to go through. And I'm not worried about that at this point. This is where you play the Jeopardy music. Okay, we're nearly there now. So what we want to do is close out the Preferences window and close Minihost. What you want to do at this point is reboot your machine again so that we can make sure all devices will communicate properly. Okay, now that you're back up and running, let's go ahead and open up a Reason session. Go to your rack, right-click, go to Instruments, and create an external MIDI instrument. Under the logo for external MIDI instrument, you see where it's getting its information from. If it doesn't say loopy one, make sure it does. Next, you want to create an audio track. Open it up, and make sure that your input is correct. If you want mono, leave it mono. If you want stereo, click stereo. Now go back in and tell it you want the SPDIF to be the location for that. Now over in your sequencer window, you want to make sure your instrument focus is on the EMI and that it's record enabled. And on the audio track, you want to make sure the monitoring for the track is also enabled, and you click and it turns green if it is. And here comes the payoff. Go ahead and open up Minihost, click the OK, and anywhere in the blank space, right click, hover over plugin, all your plugins will show up, pick the plugin you want to use by left clicking, and it comes up in its own window. Go to Instruments, pick the instrument you want to use, and within the instrument, for your MIDI channel, it should either say Omni or Port A from Host, Channel 1. Either one will work. At this point, start hitting keys. And you're now hearing. Yes, you are. You're hearing an external MIDI instrument in Reason. Now, if you want to record those MIDI notes, make sure your EMI is selected and that it is record enabled. Go ahead and hit record. Now you'll see that the MIDI notes have been recorded on your EMI track. In order to save that, what you want to do is go to your audio track. Now make sure it is record enabled, and starting from the beginning, go ahead and record the MIDI track onto the audio. You can see that it did record it because you've got a waveform there. Now to play it back to the beginning, mute your external MIDI instruments so it's not playing both back at the same time. Go ahead and hit play. And there you have it. You are now recording external MIDI instruments in Reason. Is that not cool? I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any questions or comments, or the process didn't work for you, just hit me up in the comments section here. Thanks for your time, and I hope you all have fun with this.